Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are Zooming in from, and welcome to the Creative Confidence Series. As we give folks a few more moments to join, we'd love for you to answer this prompt on the screen in the chat. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of data? Thanks for joining us today. Heather, numbers. Yes, definitely. Insights from Andre. Yes. Math, comparison. Accuracy. Oh, data science. Information, evaluation. Rebecca, how to lie with statistics.
I love that one.
We will touch on that. Security, stories. Vladimir, thank you. I'm on unrelated numbers or collection of sentences. Anita, statistics. Frederick, decisions. Keep them coming. First thing that comes to mind. Somebody said sensory information. Alvaro, Yannick, evidence generation. Thanks, everybody. Well, my name is Joanna, and I'm a design director on the content and production team here at IDEO U. And I'm very happy to be joined by Sayuri, our product manager, and Ellie Racy, one of our senior learning experience designers and one of the creators of Innovating with Data. We're here to talk about this brand new course and answer any questions that you might have about data, this learning experience in particular, what it's like to learn with IDEO U overall. And many of you have actually already submitted questions already, and we'll be covering those in a bit. If you didn't have a chance to submit your questions yet, you can do so throughout this conversation by typing them in the chat. We'll have people monitoring them, answering in chat, and also getting to them in today's session, and we'll get to as many as we can. So to kick it off, I will turn it over to Sayuri, who's going to give a quick overview about IDEO U and how our cohort courses work.
Thanks, Joanna, and hello, everybody. Thank you for spending your morning, day, night with us, wherever you are in the world. IDEO U is IDEO's learning center. We offer online courses that are designed to equip you with the skills, mindsets, and tools to help you stay relevant and adaptive in our modern world. We offer 3 types of courses, which are self-paced, cohort, and certificates. And today we'll be focusing on our cohort courses, which are 5 weeks long and require around 4 hours of coursework per week. And what's really great about our cohort experience is that while you'll be learning alongside other learners from all over the world, you still have the flexibility to go through the course at the pace that fits your schedule. There are no mandatory live components, so you don't have to worry about having to log in at a certain time. And at the same time, it is a very interactive experience. So you'll have access to a live teaching team, which is composed of experts in the field who are there to provide you feedback. And there'll also be plenty of opportunities for you to connect with your fellow learners, including optional video calls. So I'd say it has the best of both worlds, the flexibility and the collaborative components. I could go on forever, but I'll stop here. And if you have any questions about a course experience, feel free to post them in the chat and I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. Thanks, Sayuri. So, of course, today we're here to talk about data, which is our newest course. And we're very lucky to have Ellie join us, who's actually one of the main designers and writers behind this news course. So welcome, Ellie. Can you tell us or share a little bit more about yourself, maybe your background, and one fun fact?
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here with you all today to talk about the course. So a little bit about me, as Joanna mentioned, I'm a learning experience designer here at IDEO, and I work very closely alongside Joanna and our content and production team, as well as our brilliant IDEO subject matter experts to dream up, design, and develop new course offerings. So my background is in online learning design, education technology, curriculum. I've worked in a number of different education spaces, everything from academia to education publishing to ed tech. And what always really excites me is just the sort of the potential of technology to really enhance the learning experience, make it learning accessible, and really just connect a global community of learners. So I'm really excited to share this course with you. Fun fact about me, I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I'm a total Star Trek nerd. And what I love about Star Trek is I always think it's ahead of its time, and it's always sort of imagining and predicting what the future could be like, and including a lot of the technology that we now use today. So if I want to know what the future holds, I just watch an episode of Star Trek.
This is true, everyone. Ellie is definitely a Star Trek fan. So if you have any other Star Trek fans out there today, you can side chat with Ellie about that. Okay, so let's chat about innovating with data. And can you tell us in a nutshell, Ellie, what this course is all about?
So this course is about how you can use data as part of an innovation and creative problem-solving process. And at its core, it's really about helping you reframe your relationship with data. And that starts by shifting the way you think about data, the way you use data, and how you approach data in your work. And it's really designed to help you better understand and tackle complex challenges, understand the people your customers, your users, helping you find the right data to answer your questions, derive insights from that data, and turn those insights into compelling stories and visualizations that are really capable of moving people to take action. So we like to think that this course is really about helping you leverage data as a resource, so you can solve the right problem, discover new opportunities for design, inspire creative directions, and design innovative solutions.
So I know in this course, we talk about bringing a human-centered lens to data. Can you elaborate more about what that means exactly?
Sure. So when we say human-centered lens, it's really about focusing on people. So we often think of data as this the objective truth. But in reality, data comes from a very human process. It's created by people, for people. We decide what to measure and how to measure it. We decide how to collect that data, how to analyze and interpret and communicate it. And even when data can feel very objective, like it's, generated from a system or you find it in a database, it's really important to remember that, that's still architected and designed by people. So this really, keeping this human side of the data in mind, what it does, it helps us consider the context of that data and to think more creatively about how we might use it. The other thing to keep in mind is your own subjective lens when you are working with data. So that's a lot shaped by your own personal experiences, your expertise, your beliefs, your backgrounds. So any data-informed decision-making process is really, it needs to surface bias. And you want to interrogate your approach to data and be aware of what sort of incentives you're bringing into it, what biases, what perspectives. And so that's what we really think about when we're thinking about this human-centered lens, not only the people behind the data, but also you as that data creator and collector.
Great. So as part of this course, they'll be gaining sort of very accessible tools and techniques for doing that, right? So you can develop sort of deeper empathy, gaining richer insights, and building confidence to tell better stories and design solutions that actually meet the needs of real people.
Yeah.
You mentioned a little bit earlier about sort of the data collecting and the process, the decision-making process, and the process by which we, work with data. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? How does one get started with data?
So I'm really glad you asked that question, because one of the most common mistakes we can make when working with data is and you may have had this experience, we just start with, whatever data set we have on hand. We just grab a bunch of data and we just start analyzing, right? And in this course, we take a different approach, and we sort of say you should start with the problem or the question, not the data. And so what we're trying to help you is sort of take a step back and get really clear on what is the problem you're trying to solve. What are the questions that you're trying to answer with data before you sort of dive into any analysis. So that's kind of the first step. And so part of that is taking time up front to ask a lot of important questions to frame and refine your problem. Think through the different aspects of what you can actually do, what is actually feasible for you to do, given your time frame, given your organization's priorities. And what this is going to allow you to do is save a lot of time and effort and resources down the road, because you'll be focusing on solving the right problem with your data. And from there, then you want to think about, well, what is the right data to collect? Because what problem you choose to solve is really going to influence your data collection efforts, right? So you don't need to go out and grab all the data that there is. There's probably going to be a very small subset of data that's going to be relevant for what you're trying to do. And so you want to get clear on what that is before you go out and gather the data. So that's really about thinking, what data do we currently have that could be useful to me? And then if there isn't any existing data, how might I create my own?
Right. So spending some time intentionally, strategically upfront to save you some time later in the process.
That's a very often overlooked step in the process. And so it's a very, if you want to get real about solving real customer facing problems, right, you want to take the time to understand and define that problem early on.
So we often get asked for all of our courses, who is this specific course really for? And how would you address that, Ellie?
Very broadly speaking, I think this course is for anyone who uses data to sort of drive innovation within their organization or industry, anyone who's involved in coming up with new ideas and strategies, anyone who works to develop new products, services, experiences, or just to improve processes and systems. I think this course is great for anyone, whether you're new to working with data or you're even a little further along in your data journey. I think what we all share is this greater desire to be more data informed in our decision making and in our creative process. And I think this course is really designed to help you do that in a more balanced and human way, no matter what industry or role you're in. So,
continue.
I was going to say, I think it's also just important to mention what this course is not designed to teach you. And this is really important to mention. While things like cleaning your data, preparing your data for analysis, actually performing those analyses are really important steps in any process of working with data, they are not the focus of our course. Our course is not designed to teach you specific statistical or analytical tools or more advanced topics in data science. So I just wanted to sort of mention that.
So if you're joining us today and you're listening in and you are designing, say, a new solution, and it can be a product or service or experience, or you're trying to tackle a complex problem that data you think can help you explore and better understand, especially in those instances where there's no data yet. I think that's oftentimes a problem that people have, which is this sort of cold start problem where they don't know what to go out and collect. How might this course help them?
So if you're in a situation where you don't have any existing data to work with, this is where you can get really creative. You can start to think about how might I create my own data? You can think about how might I use simulated or proxy data or analogous data. There's a lot of open data sets out there on the internet. You can extract data from the web. So there's lots of different places that you can look for data, especially when you're in those earlier, more exploratory phases of a project where there isn't a lot of data for you to start working with. I think the other thing to keep in mind is that one thing about our course is a lot of people use data as a method to validate something, like at the end of a process, after the fact, either, a decision has already been made and you're looking to validate that, or you've already chosen a direction to go to and you want to sort of confirm that. Sometimes those decisions are already made on gut instinct. But what we're actually showing is when we're talking about innovation, you can use data much, much earlier in the process before that decision moment, before that validation moment. It can help you to brainstorm. It can help you to ideate, to come up with new concepts. It can inspire new ideas and opportunity areas and different creative directions that you might not have considered. I think it's a lot of times, a lot of the data that we have and that we use is very backward looking. It's looking at the past. And when you're in the space of innovation, when you're innovating, right, that's often you're looking towards the future. You know, you don't know exactly how your users are going to react. You don't know necessarily how your product or service is going to perform in the market. In some ways, you're making a bet on the future, and data is one way to help you build that confidence and find direction as you're going through this process.
Yeah, that's really cool. The difference between kind of like backward looking and forward looking when it comes to using and working with data. Okay, so one more question before we jump to the audience submissions, but this is one that we get a lot, so I think it's helpful. What level of data expertise do I need to take this course?
Good question. So this course is very accessible to people of all different experience levels. I will say the course doesn't focus on any specific technical skills or tasks or tools that you need to learn, like things like how to mine raw data or clean your data, or again, perform, any type of specific data analyses like regression or correlation tests and things like that. It is helpful to have a basic fluency or familiarity with data. We do cover some statistical concepts, but we try to explain those as simply as possible. But it is really helpful if you have a strong desire to use data in a more meaningful and thoughtful way. And so what this course emphasizes is that more human-centered approach. And it's especially well suited for anyone who wants to gain a deeper understanding of their audience or their customers, but really focus on the human, the people behind the data. And so you want to be interested in gathering data, actively seeking ways to translate your data into meaningful insights, stories, and visualizations so you can communicate with a wider audience and really drive action.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you, Ellie. Okay, so we will transition to the Q&A. Please submit your questions in the chat if you haven't done so already. And I know as those are coming in, we'll actually start with the question that was submitted ahead of time by Sean, and it's a two-parter. So the first part was, what can I do to implement what I've learned when it comes to data? And then the second part is, how can I persuade my stakeholders vis-a-vis data to be more innovative?
First, Sean, thank you for those questions. So it's not, although this is not required, and sometimes it's not possible, it can be helpful to bring in a real problem or real challenge that you're working on and practice applying like the methods, the mindsets, the tools and techniques of this course to that challenge as you're going through the lessons. And that tends to be much more motivating for learners when you can directly apply it to something you're working on. Of course, timing doesn't always work out, or you may not be in a place in the project where you can start doing that. So one thing you can do is really lean into the discussion and the reflection questions to start thinking about how you might apply what you're learning to your own work. The other thing is you can bring in your own data set into this course. We will give you some practice data to work with, but if you do have data of your own that you'd like to use, you're more than welcome to do that. We do know that sometimes it takes time to clean and process your data for you, so that's why we want to try to provide some practice data. But if you have data of your own that you want to directly use, you're more than welcome to do that.
That's great. So the course will, we will provide sample sets for you, but then if you want to make the course more applicable to your current job, daily life, we've built it such that you can do that as well.
Absolutely.
So, okay, so we have a question from Lauren, and she says, we collect data through engaging with end users through interviews, focus groups, workshops, etc. Do you or will you be sharing any analysis tools and methodologies in the course working with that kind of qualitative data?
I'm sorry, I totally forgot to answer the second part of Sean's question. Oh, sorry about that. I think he was asking about how you can persuade your stakeholders to be more innovative
Yes,
using
sorry.
data? And the answer there is really storytelling with data. Is really a powerful way to persuade your stakeholders and build things like alignment. First, you always want to take time to understand who your audience is and what they care about and meet them where they are. And speaking, for example, speaking to your team is going to be very different from like speaking to your senior stakeholders. And the other thing is you really want to know what story you want to tell. Start with the story, not necessarily the data. Whenever you're presenting data, in a way, you are making an argument. And so you can emphasize different aspects of the data to support that story. You just want to be really mindful about what you're choosing to show and what you're not choosing to show, and try to anticipate what questions your audience might have. And the last thing I would say is that, look for ways to bring your data to life. If you want to make the case for, how we can be more innovative, you can try to sort of create compelling visualizations that are easy for your audience to understand and digest. A really big tip is to just balance the numbers, the charts, the graphs with those more humanizing touches. And that can be qualitative data like anecdotes.
Oh, looks like we may have.
I think Ellie's frozen.
Yeah. Okay, so while we wait for Ellie to jump back on, we actually had a question.
Interviews.
Oh, there she goes.
Story. Sorry, am I still frozen?
No, you're not anymore.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So the last piece of advice was around balancing your storytelling between the numbers, the more sort of quantitative data, and then that qualitative insights. That can just help build empathy with your audience and help them like emotionally connect with the data in a way that dry facts and figures often aren't able to.
We actually have a follow-up question about data and storytelling, which we'll get to, but then circling back to Lauren's question about when you have qualitative data such as interviews, focus groups, workshops, etc., is there going to be any sharing of analysis tools and methodologies in this course?
Like analytical tools or methodologies, just because we want to keep the course as broadly accessible as possible. And we know people are going to come in with varying levels of experience working with data. It's really more around human-centered methods. But there is some consideration around, when you're, for example, designing a survey, you want to think ahead of time about how that survey will be analyzed. But we won't necessarily cover the how-tos of any specific statistical or analytical methodologies.
And going back to Indalata asked a question about the data that we have can help us to build a story. How might we deal with data that we don't have?
So if I'm understanding the question, as in if you are in a situation where there's data that is missing from your data sets, I think one thing that you might want to do is you want to be upfront about that, of there will always be sometimes limitations of data, especially if there's data that you already, existing data that you didn't collect or create yourself. You always want to be asking yourself, what data am I missing? And take that into consideration, especially when you are communicating your data out to others. I think you want to just be very candid and open about what data may not be included in the analysis. And keep in mind that when you're performing your analysis, it could be somewhat skewed because of those missing data points.
Yeah, so build on that would be, I think you touched on this a little bit, but how might one think about finding more data?
Oh, so there's a number of different methods that, as we mentioned earlier, there's a lot of existing data out in the world. And if you are, it just really depends actually on what phase of a project you are, what moment it is. If you're in a moment that's towards the end and it's sort of more validating, it's a little bit different from when you're sort of earlier on and you're maybe looking for direction. So you may look out for analogous data. It may not be exactly comparable, but it can help you build a little bit of confidence. The other thing is to think about what degree of confidence do you need? How precise do you need to be? That will also depend on, what type of data you want to use and how much of it. So again, you can go out and try to find existing data. There's a lot of benefits to creating your own data, but there are some drawbacks to that as well. And that's something that we cover in the course, depending on which approach you take. And you want to sort of keep in mind, ideally, you want to do both. You want to create your own, because even if you're using an existing data set, there's going to be some gaps. It may not be entirely relevant, and maybe just a small subset of it is going to be useful to you. So think about what is the best method for you to go out and get that data that you need.
That's actually a great segue to another question that we had about when you have smaller sample sizes and say, for instance, maybe they're not statistically representative, as well as dealing with outliers. I know that in the course, we have a whole sort of like section that talks about that. Can you elaborate a little bit more?
So in terms of smaller sample sizes, again, there's no really, I would just go back to saying, like, it just depends on how precise you need to be, how much accuracy you need. You're going to get more accuracy with a larger sample. You also want to think about how representative that sample needs to be. You want to think about what degree of confidence you need. If the stakes are very high, you may need, you're probably going to want to get a larger sample. Thinking about the population that you're interested in, there's probably going to be aspects of that with a smaller sample size that's not going to be necessarily represented. So it's one of those things where there's a lot of different layers to thinking about how much data you need. And that's something that we talk a bit about in the course. And it really depends on what it is that you're trying to do. In terms of the second question, can you remind me what that was?
It was just about how do you deal with outliers.
Oh, outliers. Yes, we have a whole video talking about outliers. And we look at outliers a little bit differently, and we think about them a little bit differently in the sense that, like, in more sort of typical data analysis, outliers tend to be either like removed or ignored or excluded. Sometimes outliers are just errors in your data, and you do want to take them out. But when you're working in the context of innovation and design, a true outlier can actually point you to something really interesting. It can represent people who have some unique or unexpected behaviors that you might not have considered, you might have overlooked. And so it really can point you in the direction of something interesting. It's a place where you want to explore more. You might want to go out and do a bit more research to understand, well, why is this person or why is this data point showing up as an outlier? So it can actually get you to some pretty cool insights.
Thanks, Ellie. Andre asked, are there real case studies, examples showing the application of the topics touched on in the course?
There are quite a few examples and some case studies where we show some of these strategies in action. And it's always really great to get a sort of behind the scenes peek at how IDEO works with our clients. And there's some very, very cool projects that they've worked on. So we're really excited to share those in the course.
Yes, I know there's one very sort of fun one that we're pretty excited about. Carlos asked a question, and Ellie, I'm curious your take on it, and then myself and Sayuri, we can also sort of answer this as well. But what's the main difference between this new course and other providers, such as, say, like an IBM or a Google?
I think one differentiator with our course is that, and I sort of mentioned this earlier, we are using data much earlier in a creative process as a place to brainstorm, to ideate, to come up with, creative new ideas, to inspire new ideas, to find creative direction, versus where a lot of people use data is, again, in that more sort of validation, more to sort of confirm, or sort of towards the end of a process. And so we really see data as a medium for design. That, I think, is a big differentiator with our course. It is really a rich resource for design, and it doesn't simply have to be to just confirm or validate something.
Yeah. Sayuri, do you want to take a crack at that one as well? And then I
Yeah,
can-
I'd say something that really makes us unique in terms of the learning experience is that it's a very collaborative process. So you'll have plenty of opportunities to connect with your peers, exchange feedback. There's going to be that teaching team that's not only providing you knowledge and expertise and guidance, but they're amazing at really creating that safe space for you to really dive into your learning experience. Because a lot of times when you're in these courses, you're really challenging yourself, stretching yourself and seeing things from angles that maybe you haven't seen from. And they're there to really hold that space for you.
Yeah, and I would say, Carlos, that one main difference is the sort of IDEO human-centered approach to design, and how this course is really about how you use data, yes, but also how you might think about data, and the mindset shifts that we're promoting. So for instance, just this kind of overall idea that when you think about data and you're approaching data and using it for, whatever you're using it for, it's like the idea, like data doesn't necessarily give you all the answers, but it does help you ask better questions, right? The concept that data is not always inherently objective, there's bias introduced in it. So how do you then think about that, and how do you approach your data in this more new human-centered way that really drives innovation? Okay, any other sort of questions? I'm sort of like checking the chat as well as checking our database of ones that had already come in before. So actually there was a question from, I think this is more for Sayuri, because it was more about sort of like the course in general. How do I know, like, of all the courses, like how does IDEO U courses operate a little, if you can elaborate more on the sort of the cohort aspect to it, and how do I know which course that I should be taking at any given time? So Sayuri, if you want to take that one, and then I can pick up.
Sure. So just to give you a brief overview of what your cohort experience is going to look like, they're 5 weeks long. Each week you'll be going through a lesson, and you'll be going through videos, articles, and then there will be assignments that are going to allow you to immediately apply your learnings and really practice, make that learning tangible. And then there will be optional weekly video calls that you can join, hosted by your teaching team. So that's a great opportunity for you to ask more questions and also connect with your peers. And there are also going to be lots of opportunities for you to collaboratively learn with other learners offline as well. Sorry, what was the second question? Oh, how to choose the best course for you?
Right.
Yes. So I would invite you to visit our website. We have videos and syllabi that you can take a look at for all of our courses. We have mainly 4 topic areas: design thinking, innovation, past skills, and sorry, I need my morning coffee. There's another one. You'll see it on our website. And if you want more personalized suggestions, you're welcome to reach out to hello@ideou.com and share your learning goals, a little bit about your background, so we can suggest the best course for you.
Awesome. I think we are running out of time. I just want to take, let's see, do we have time for one more question? I'm looking at the team. Yes, no. Okay. So yes, we do have time for one more question. And I think the one that I had jumped out at me was around, how do we find data to identify areas of opportunities when we're looking deeper into innovation? So that's a question for Ellie.
So how do we find data?
How do we use data, I guess, let's rephrase, to identify areas of opportunities when it comes to innovation?
So one of the things that we'll talk about in this course is we share 3 different strategies for how you might look at your data to identify insights that can help you discover opportunity areas for design and innovation. And I won't necessarily go into super detail, but one of them does involve looking differently at outliers, thinking about when you are using multiple sources of data, looking for contradictions or discrepancies between those data points can actually help you find some interesting insights that then you can dig further into to find opportunities that you might not have noticed otherwise. And the other one is thinking about what you expect to find in your data before you actually go look at a single piece of data. So if you spend some time with your team articulating your expectations, then if you go look at the data and you see something that was totally unexpected or surprising to you, that is another way that you can come across some of those opportunities.
Thanks, Ellie. And I just did want to touch on somebody, Andre, I think asked about social media and sort of privacy restrictions and how we might find the right contextual data. I just did want to allude to, we do have a whole section in the course that talks about exactly that and how you might use social signaling actually as a way to get some of that data and to form your innovation projects and sort of like set that, understand like the context of like where your customers are coming from, what they're talking about, what they're thinking about, and how you can go and sort of like get access to that data. We have a moment in the course that talks about that. Okay, so I'm getting told that it's time to wrap up. Thank you so much for attending. Just a reminder that we will be sending a recording of this session to all the folks who have registered. And if you're interested in learning more about innovating with data, you can visit ideou.com/data. And as a thank you for attending, we are including a 15% off coupon, which you can redeem at checkout. And that is code data15. So thank you guys so much again for joining us. We really loved having you here. And again, if you have any questions or comments or need more information, you can always reach us at hello@ideou.com. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Create.